Welcome back. And of course, the continuing fallout from yesterday's congressional hearing with FBI Director James Comey and just what really took place. I mean, the fallout from this is incredible. And it's been interesting to listen to the various talk shows and see how America's responding. Delighted to have with us today Joe Messina. He is the host of the Real Side radio show, and that's his website, therealside.com. And you can go there and connect with them. Hi, Joe. Good to see you.
Well, thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you. So where's home base for you, Joe?
I'm just north of Los Angeles in a hidden bunker.
Okay, well, that's probably the safe place to be.
That's right.
Good to see you. Well, first of all, your snapshot review of yesterday's hearing. What'd you think?
Did you expect anything different? The thing I love, though, is Trey Gowdy. I love how Trey Gowdy goes right for the throat. And he got him in plain, simple English to admit that she lied. But I think what people aren't catching is that when they do these investigations, when Comey does an investigation like this, they truly only go, because I don't know if you know this, but I'm actually been elected to a pretty large school board here in Southern California. They only investigate exactly what they're told to investigate by the governing body.
That was the narrow field by which he did this and found her not guilty. Were you surprised to find out that she was interviewed without being under oath, without a transcript, without any kind of written testimony?
It was a tea party. I'm sure she served finger sandwiches and everything else. You're right. I mean, nothing. There was nothing formal about it. But what really was interesting, if you heard what he said, and he was asked, did you debrief with your men? Is there a report? And he said, no. Apparently there were 6 agents there, and he only spoke to 1 or 2. He didn't interview all 6 of them. And here's what bothered me, and I talked about this Monday. I said, isn't it interesting that Loretta Lynch met with them last week, and then all of a sudden they show up there on a Saturday morning. It's 3.5 hours. Monday is a federal holiday. Somehow they investigated, debriefed, went through all the notes from Saturday morning, and he had his speech written and ready to go first thing Tuesday morning. That's what really doesn't fit in all of this.
How do you think, Joe, from your perspective and your talk show and listening to your audience, how do you think a gentleman with a sterling reputation to take over the FBI and bring credibility to the agency, in one case, it seems like he's been compromised? What do you think happened?
Well, I know you read the piece that I put up on Monday. I think he's got a family to be worried about. I think he doesn't want to end up like so many other people did, starting with James McDougal. And I really do believe this. When you think of some of the votes that have come down from the Supreme Court and others there in Congress and in the Senate, I just have to believe that there's something afoot there, and people are afraid. And it's really sad that people are afraid, because think of the weekend we just went through. We went through the what I call Independence Day weekend. I don't call it the 4th. Happy birthday, America. Think about what our founding fathers gave up to make sure we have this republic that we have today, or should have today anyhow.
Well, all right, given that, it appears, I said this earlier, the flavor in the country today is the pushback to establishment, the pushback of government. We've had enough. We know that there is corruption. We know there's this hierarchy, double standard. And isn't it interesting, Joe, that the people want the rule of law, the people want morality, the people want moral order, but the government can't deliver it?
Oh, they are so big and so out of control. The attitude now, and I've actually got friends that are congressmen, and I've seen them change over the years. And the attitude once they get up there is that we really don't know what it takes to run a government, what it takes to run a country. They've got in their minds, they've got our best interest at heart, and they know what they're doing. Just leave them alone. And once they get there, you're right. How do you take a job on that pays you $180,000 a year? Some of these guys go in there with very little money, and 22 years later, when they come out, they're multimillionaires. How does that happen? Do they get an inside scoop on what to invest in? I mean, sincerely. So when you get that much money, you get that much power. unless you've, and I know we're on the same page, unless you're truly grounded and rooted in God, you're done.
Yeah, big time. Let me ask you this. Do you think that that the Clinton fatigue factor will catch up with her enough that she would be replaced at the convention?
I don't know if she's going to be replaced at the convention. I'm almost afraid to say anything because I blew this one. I figured that she would be they would at least ask that she be indicted and go through the charges, go through a grand jury thing, and that they were going to bring in Joe Biden. And that seemed to be the inside word. Something changed in the last 10 days. As a matter of fact, I got a call just before I came on this show from a friend of mine at the FBI who wants to talk to me. And he was the one telling me that there was going to be an indictment. And when it didn't come down, I sent him an email and he said, look, something went sideways last week. I'll call you later on this week. So I don't know. I don't even know what to say anymore.
Here's my concern, and you probably feel it and sense it with your radio show, Joe. If we're not careful, cynicism, which I think is the cancer of our culture today, will rear its ugly head to where people would say, oh, well, why vote? Why bother? Why do anything? And I'm really concerned about that in the faith community. They could easily write this off as why bother. And to me, that would be a huge mistake. Are you sensing that level of cynicism?
I've been sensing that since 2014, and I'll tell you, it's gotten worse this time. I could show you email after email after email where people have written and said, why should I bother voting? It doesn't matter. The Clintons have it. They're going to run with this thing anyhow. They don't care what we think. We did it in 2014. I tell you the one thing I get all the time, and I'm not in agreement with, is, God is sovereign, God's in control, and whoever he wants in power is going to be in power. And I wrote a piece about 2 months ago that said, Christians, you got to get off your knees and do something. It's time that you do something. Pray about what candidate to get behind, then get behind that candidate, whether you make phone calls for them, you walk your precinct or your block, your area. And if you would just get involved, if evangelicals would have come out to vote in 2014, we would have a different president today. But for some odd reason, we don't feel the need to get up and go like it's not our responsibility. God gave us government. How do you take care of the things that God gives you? When God gives you a present or a gift, do you trample all over it? Do you not care for it? I really think we have to change our mindset as believers, as Christians, as to how we handle what God's given us.
All right. Well, the presumptive alternative now is Donald Trump. He has met with a lot of the evangelical or faith-based people and leaders throughout the country. Many of them walked away from that meeting satisfied. A lot of folks still aren't satisfied. How critical is it that the Christians vote for him, even though they may not like him?
I think it's extremely critical. I really do. I think that the Republicans are the one that are going to call this presidency. So if they don't come out and vote, I hear a lot of people saying, "Well, I'm going to vote for Hillary because." Donald Trump is so bombastic. He has no feeling and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, really? Is that really why you're going to vote for her? Let's just take it down, write two lines, right? What is Hillary going to stand up for? What's Trump going to stand up for? You've heard this a million times. We're not voting for a pastor in chief, right? We're voting for somebody who's going to stand up for our rights. And no, look, he doesn't know everything about carrying legislation, about getting things done at the government level. But here's what I try to explain to people. That's what gets us in trouble. When you think a president should have their hands in everything, then we've got a problem. When Trump builds the Trump Tower, for instance, you think he takes a hammer and a screwdriver and he's the one that builds it? No, he surrounds himself with the right people to get the job done. Now, isn't it interesting that we're beating on Trump for his failures when you think about what's taken place in government, the billions of dollars that have been wasted, the millions of dollars that have been wasted? We seem to be okay with that, with our taxpayer money. But Trump's made a few mistakes. And again, I'm not an endorser of Trump. I'm looking at these two candidates and saying which one is going to fight harder for my freedoms, for my ability to worship freely, for my ability to teach my kids freely, to be able to go out and create our businesses as we've had. Trump is going to do that. Hillary's not going to do that. If anything, she's going to take more freedoms away from us.
Yeah, and I think there's one other level there that is absolutely critical, and that's the Supreme Court.
Oh, I agree with you. If she nominates, and it's true, there'll be 4 or 5 nominations to the Supreme Court over the next 4 to 8 years. If she nominates, this country will change drastically over the next 20 years. I fear for my grandchildren if Hillary Clinton gets in and changes that court that drastically.
All right, let me take a break here, Joe. We'll come back, and we're talking Joe Messina, and he is the host of the Real Side radio show, and you can go to therealside.com. That's his website. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back, and what a delight to have with us today Joe Messina. He is the host of the Real Side radio show, and his website is called therealside.com. And I enjoy talking to Joe and others who have their radio show because they got their finger on the pulse as people call in and they talk to their shows. And Joe, let me just ask you, do you think, given what's going on now with the Clintons and all this nonsense, and it's just unbelievable, I mean, you can't write this stuff. You can't sit down and think it up. But do you think that the country could, in spite of all of this, elect her as president?
No, I really believe that Trump will be president, and not because this is really sad, because I'm not a lesser of two evils guy, but I think the people are going to vote for Trump. Think about what happened in the primary. Think about how many Democrats jumped ship, actually re-registered as Republicans to vote for Donald Trump. Now, I'm hoping we don't have the same issues that we had in 2014. We probably will. You know, you had precincts, I don't know if you recall, that voted at 108% of the precinct came out to vote. Always interesting how that happens. Usually, I think the most that come out in a certain area could be between 80 and 90%. Doesn't seem to matter what's going on. It's very hard to get people to come out and vote at times. But I think that Trump will get in, but not because he's the best guy for the job, which is, you have to admit, it's pretty sad. I think Trump will get in because we are tired of the same old, same old. We are tired of politicians running this country. And I think the fact that he can't be bought, he really can't be if you think about it. And I don't know who has more money than him that can come in and offer him enough money to make a change or do something different. He knows how to deal with the, foreign affairs or what have you, but he also knows how to surround himself with the right people. I said that earlier, and I think people understand that. I think people believe that. If you watch the interviews on TV, if you watch the people say, "Oh no, I'm voting for Hillary," they are hardcore left-leaning progressive Democrats. They wouldn't vote for a Republican if Hillary re-registers as a Republican the day before the election. They wouldn't vote for her. So these are just hardcore Democrats that won't cross the aisle. I do believe that Trump's going to get in, and I don't know if I think he's going to get in by a landslide like some people do, but I don't believe he's just going to squeak by either.
Well, they say people are policy, so who he surrounds himself will be a reflection of the policy of what his administration will be. And the first one on the list seems to be gaining most of the support, at least from some of the internet polling that's been going on. It looks like people want Newt to be his VP. What do you think?
Well, here's my problem with Newt. And forgive me, but you've got two old white guys up there again, and we have been beat up over the years that we're not the party of diversity, which I find amazing because you look at our star players and they are from every walk of life. I think Newt would be a great Secretary of State. I think he'd do a great job there. Obviously, he'll do a great job as vice president. He knows how the legislature works. He knows how to get things done in Washington, in D.C., and probably would pull Trump along in a lot of areas. So, yes, he'd be a good choice. But I think there are other good choices as well.
You think Trey Gowdy ought to be Attorney General?
Oh, without question. If he doesn't choose Trey Gowdy as the Attorney General, I want his meds checked.
Okay. It's been said from the faith community, the two issues that could return God's full blessing to our country is a stop of the killing of babies and a very firm affirmation on Israel. Do you think Trump can do that?
I think he can easily do the affirmation on Israel. That's number one. I've always had an issue with and not to get theological on you, but you think about what God did with us, right? We had 10 commandments. We couldn't make those happen. So Jesus had to come in and say, okay, look, you guys can't do the 10. How about let's try for these 2. So I think if we keep trying to legislate abortion, if you would, abortion is an issue of the heart. Abortion is the issue of people not understanding the gift of birth, that actual baby that's inside your body, and the selfishness where a woman feels like she's got the total right to decide who lives and who dies. So I've always come back to this is an issue of the heart. Now, we can make this illegal. I don't think that's really going to help the issue. Yeah, it'll make it harder, but people who want it are going to do it anyhow. We need to reach our young people. We do a lousy job as Christians, as conservatives, of really reaching our young people and explaining them what their value is, what the value of life is. And Students for Life have started a campaign where they no longer say, God doesn't want you to have an abortion. They are now explaining the realities of that little life in your body on college campuses. And they are winning in leaps and bounds. They are stopping abortions from happening on a regular basis. But it's not because they stick their finger in somebody's face and say, hey, that's wrong. They're teaching them what that life is worth, what that life could be, and the preciousness of that life and the value of that life. And they're making headway. So maybe to the general populace, Donald Trump, if he says, he'll keep, he'll make abortion harder. Now, I do think that the Texas law that was recently struck down shows you the hypocrisy of those who say they want safe abortions, because the Texas legislature was simply saying, look, the doctor has to have a relationship with the hospital. You have to be able to get there, and the clinic has to have the same clean standards as a hospital would have. So this is why I say the argument from the left is disingenuous when they say, abortion on demand, anytime, no apologies. That's not safe and sane abortion.
That's beautifully said, Joe. I did not read the article, but I was made aware that you wrote an article about the comparison of Donald Trump and Hitler. Now, there's a stretch.
Well, it wasn't so much that people were what a figure from the past. If you've got to tie somebody together, and we become a society of sound bites, right? I mean, it's on Twitter, it's 140 characters or less. Who actually reads? I write one weekly long piece. Everything else are those short bites, and I write one weekly long piece of 1,000 characters or more. And the other short ones get read a lot more, but the longer ones don't. But when it comes to, they compared him to Hitler because they don't know, most people, when they think about Hitler, they know that Hitler killed millions of people. He took over a country and that kind of thing. So think about what they've done. Think about the story or the image that they're spinning, because there's no detail there. There's just comparing him or calling him or saying he's going to run this country like Hitler did.
Interesting. Well, let's see what happens. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll talk after the election on that one. Hey, Joe, what do you think happens? What do you think happens to the DNC? I mean, Bernie has not pulled out of the race. He's very much going to be a part of the convention. That thing seems to be laying low. Do you think it's boiling, or it's over?
No, it's over for him. I think that, he's been fighting. He's like the old Uncle Frank that's been sitting around at Thanksgiving for the last 25 years, thinking that he's going to bring back Ike. You're going to find somebody like Ike to bring back into power. But, you get a guy like Bernie. You got to give him credit. He really thinks that he can change the DNC. He thinks he can change policy because he got enough votes. And listen, he did a bang-up job. You have to admit. What was it in New Hampshire? It was a 70. She had 70 points over him, or she was 70-30. And when they came in, he beat her. So when you look at stuff like that, he's got to have some power and some clout. So he's hoping he could take those numbers into the DNC and get some of those changes made. She immediately started talking, I think at the end of last week, when she realized she had to pull some of Bernie's people over, she started talking about free college again. Now, she wasn't talking about that earlier. She was talking about reduced fees, but she wasn't talking free college. Now she's talking free college all of a sudden. So he will make a difference at the convention. There's no question about it. I don't know to what degree though. They may placate him and offer to give him all kinds of things, but that'll be we'll see how it plays out.
Somebody says, given what Bernie was to the left, that Trump was to the right, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to November, it's going to be a decision between socialism and capitalism. You think that's a fair assessment?
I think that's very fair. But listen, if Hillary gets in, or if really Hillary gets to do what she wants to do, I think it's going to be the difference between a dictatorship and capitalism. Seriously, because I think there's very few things, again, at this point, that the Clintons, including Hillary, think that we know what we want. I think she'll definitely rule as to what she believes is truth and what needs to be done in this country.
All right, let me go over to Obama for a minute, Joe. We now see that in the last months of his administration, he's doing some major social engineering in this country.
Yep.
He put the threat on gender-neutral bathrooms in schools, which is also bathrooms and gym class and all of that, locker rooms, and said that it would be tied to federal funding of dollars. Unbelievable. Then he turns around and he lifts the ban on transgenders in the military. I don't know what is in his little head between now and January, but it looks like he is going to do everything he can through executive order to socially neutralize us, if not neuter us. What do you think?
I know it makes for bad TV, but I think you're right on. I think he's going to, narrow watch the city burn. I think that's exactly what he's going to do. Everything that he tried to get done or wanted to get done and couldn't, I think he's going to do through executive order on the way out. And depending on who gets in, will depend on how fast it gets unwound. Because like Obamacare, I've always been an opponent of Obamacare, if you would. And I've always said the longer you let this thing go, the harder it's going to be to unwind. And now even the hardcore repeal Obamacare people are saying, this is going to be a real chore to take care of or to unwind. So I think you're going to have the same problem now. You talk about what he's done in the military. How are you going to unwind all of that? You talked about the transgender bathrooms. I'm in the belly of the beast in California. We've had this for years, and we've had problems with, males, any way you cut it, people who have the male parts in female locker rooms and steam rooms and gyms and that kind of thing. And you can actually get in trouble for asking them to leave. And we've seen it happen here in California. So he's just making something national that some states have already seen, obviously, at the state level. And if we don't, this is our fault, though. I want to come back to this. This is our fault. If we as Christians, if we as conservatives would actually elect people to office that would maintain a moral foundation locally, nobody gets up in the morning and says, hey, I'm going to run for Congress. They start off at the school board level, dog catcher, city council, and then what do? We send them to the state legislature. They do a poor job locally, and then we send them to the state legislature. Why? Because we belong to a particular party, and that's how we're going to vote. And then when they get to the state legislature, as they've done in California, they make these crazy laws, and then we send them to the federal level. We deserve what we have. We really do, because we won't get out, take the time to get to know what the issues are, who we're voting for, and who we're sending to govern us.
Since China holds most of our national debt, and Trump is kind of, waving his finger in their nose, I came up with an answer. The way we pay off the national debt to China is we just give them California.
I'm with you. No, I'd be good for that. Give me 2-week notice, though. Let me get out of here. But yeah, they can have it all.
Yeah, come to Oregon. All right. So, one last question. The faith community really didn't turn out, as you mentioned, in 2012 with Romney. And one of the primary reasons they didn't turn out for him, because he was a Mormon. Now we have a guy that's all over the place, but he is winning a lot of Christian favor. Do you think the faith community will go for it?
Well, I think the difference is this. He's been fervent about saying that I will fight for your right to practice your religion. I will fight for your right to worship. Now, I don't care. Forgive me for saying it this way, but I don't care if it's a rank pagan or a heathen getting in there. If he's truly willing to fight for my right to be able to worship, you can have. We know, we've seen it. We've known devout Christians that don't act or perform like a Christian should perform. And I think that's what we see, forgive me, in there now. But as far as Trump goes, no, I think the evangelicals need to figure out that we need somebody. Look, when you get on an airplane, do you look at the pilot and say, hey, are you a Christian? Do you know Jesus? No. You say, can you fly the plane? I want the guy to have white hair. I want him to look like he's had his suit for 30 years. You know, that's the guy I want flying a plane. I don't ask him who he believes in.
Well said. Well, Joe, you're a delight. Thank you. Keep up the good work down there. Stay bunkered in your bunker. And if you want to dream some clean air, come on up to Liberal, Oregon.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no kidding, huh?
Yeah, pretty liberal. All right, let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to therealside.com. That's Joe's website, therealside.com, and check out his website and his radio show. Thanks, friend. Talk to you again soon, okay?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
All right, God bless. All right, again, realside.com. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.